This is the first in what I hope will be a regular series of videos, and it's going to be for very cheap Chinese kits. And what's prompted me to do this is I've seen a lot of very negative comments on cheap, poor quality Chinese products, and a lot of it is very deserved. It's some of the products coming out of China are extremely low quality. Having said that, they do give access to things that otherwise would be extremely difficult to get hold of, and in particular the components, plastic cases, just the general complete kits you can get for just a few pounds would be pretty much impossible to get anywhere else. Now, that's not to say there's anything wrong with cheap kits like this, and in fact I think you can probably learn as much from poorly designed electronics as you can from well designed electronics. And when I was growing up, most of my early electronic endeavours were from units and bits and pieces I found on rubbish tips, and I repurposed and salvaged the parts. And that's almost what we'll be looking at here. And the idea is once a month or so I'm going to buy a cheap kit. I'm not going to leave links as to where I got it from. I'll just say, generally speaking, where I got it. So for example, this one was off eBay, but I will say what I paid for them. And this particular one was £4.99 delivered. As you can see, it is a radio kit, AM, FM, and what I'm looking for is kits. It will be a small electronic kit, and I've decided to use two price limits. One will be under £5 delivered and one will be under £10 delivered. And as I say, I'll do this on a regular basis. If you're not interested in this sort of thing, then just skip the video. But the idea is to have a look and see what's coming out of China with these cheap kits. Are they worth the money? And secondly, I think it will be fun to put these kits together and see how good or how bad they are. So having said that, let's get started on this first one. I haven't opened it yet. This is how it turned up in a jiffy bag. As I say, I paid £4.99 for this delivered. It arrived in about a week, which was quite good from China. And already it feels cheap. It's smaller than I was expecting. You can't always tell on eBay listings. But I opened the jiffy bag and this is what was inside. And a worrying amount of Chinese writing on the instructions, but we'll see if there's any English in there as well. And we'll see what we get for our £4.99. So, I mean, I'll be including comments on packaging as well. So the packaging is what it is. It's not special. It's probably sufficient for what it is, but nothing to be too excited about. So what we get is the case, instructions, antenna, and hopefully there are some parts inside for us to make a radio out of. So, nice little speaker. It actually looks like a moulded case. I was expecting this to be 3D printed, but it actually appears to be injection moulded, which is quite a surprise. It's got some quite nice writing on there. The writing is actually quite good quality, so that's quite surprising. And I mean, it feels cheap. It's there's no denying it's got a very cheap feel to it, but it's actually not too bad. Nice little PCB, quite old school in its appearance. Phenolic board, so it's not fiberglass board, but again that adds a bit of authenticity to a design like this. Nice little scale. So AM, FM, TV. I'm not quite sure we'll be able to pick anything up on the TV bands, but it is nice that it has got full coverage for the bands we're likely to have here. Have a quick look at the instructions. And it's nice, it actually has the schematic. Obviously a modern design, it's not designed like the old small radios were, but as you can see, having the schematic, it does give us a very good indication as to how this works. It is all in Chinese, so we'll have to try and muddle our way through this. It does say 76 to 108, and that's the only bit of this I can read. Okay, so looking at the board, okay, so the board's actually got the component values on it, so it should be fairly easy to assemble this. I'm not going to show me inserting all the components and soldering it and anything like that. If you want me to include that in future videos, let me know, but I think it would be, you get a bit tedious fairly quickly if I started showing all that. But we'll have a look in the parts bag and see what's in here. Okay, so tip this out. So quite a nice selection of components. So the surprising thing here is I was expecting to find just pieces of enamelled wire that I was going to have to wind around something, but this has preformed coils in here, which is kind of a surprise. Same with the AM winding, as I was expecting this to be a piece of wire that I would have to wind myself. Okay, but so there's no English instructions, it's all Chinese, so I'll have to try and figure out how this goes together. So I'll do that off camera. If I find anything particularly unusual or difficult about the assembly, I'll get the camera back on. But other than that, I think it's just going to be a case of inserting the components as they're identified into the board, soldering them in, and then putting the mechanics together. So we'll see what we end up with. Okay, well, I've got the capacitors, or at least the small capacitors, and the resistors fitted. All went very easily. It's nice having the markings on the board. It doesn't give you the component reference, it gives you the actual value. So 104 is the value of the capacitor, 10k is the resistor value, etc. The only problem I had is the resistors are the 1/6 or 1/8 watt resistors, and even by cheap Chinese standards they're cheap, and the problem there was that I couldn't read some of the values. They were very unclear even under the microscope, so I had to resort to the multimeter. Other than that, it all went well, all the bits were there. So the next step is onto the ICs, so I'll get those fitted next. There's one through hole and one surface mount, so I'll get those in next, and then we can move on to some of the more mechanical parts. And so I have the ICs fitted. Yes, I know you'd normally fit the ICs last, but because this board will get quite densely populated as I progress, it was going to be easy to fit the surface mount IC now, so I thought I'd get that out of the way. I just need to be careful now not to blow it up with static. So on to the next parts. I'll fit the capacitors and the LED, and then we can start trying to figure out how to interconnect all this. As I say, the instructions are in Chinese, so I'll have to try and either decipher or figure out how to finish this off with regards to the mechanics. Okay, I've got the capacitors fitted, and the next thing is to try and figure out where some of the mechanical parts go. So we've got the power connector, which seems to fit there, the on-off switch, and here, looking at the case, I'm hoping it's going to help. So we can see that there's on-off down here, so we need to make sure we get this fitted the right way round. So I suspect it goes in like that, which it does. Then of course we'll have the knob to fit to this as well, and some screws in here. and then we have the tuning capacitor. And we have two adjustment holes here, so I think that has to go on that way round. Just make sure we have access to those tuning slugs, which we do, so I'll get those soldered in place and we'll go from there. Okay, so they're fitted. Familiar sound there, and the next thing is to try and figure out how all these mechanical bits fit together. We've got the on-off switch. I think it goes on top, but again I'll just check with the case to make sure that it's actually going to line up correctly. Okay, so it goes on the top. Got the LED to fit, and I need to figure out how this AM coil fits into the equation. There are two connectors or connections on the bottom here labelled AM, so I'm assuming that this coil solders to those, and then somehow it mounts into the case. But what I'll do, I'll get this sorted out, figure out how this fits together, and then to show you before I do a final connection, get all the interlinks and wires connected up, and hopefully we'll be fairly close to having this working. I also need to fit the coils as well to the boards. There's two of those to fit, so I'll get those done. Parts pile is going down, so hopefully we're getting closer to having a working radio. Okay, I've got it all figured out, I think. It's quite straightforward, just follow it through. There are some fairly clear markings on the board. SP, I assume means speaker. We've got a plus, which I think is the plus supply, minus, which is the minus supply, and then the two AM connections are for the AM coil. The LED, I use the case. I just temporarily fitted the board to the case so I could get the LED at the right height. The only thing we have to do now is to figure out how to get all this into the case. So it looks like it uses two AA batteries, so we've got these two connections. This bridge connection, I assume, goes into here, and that will tell us which way round to fit these. So I'll fit this first. I think this slides down. Okay, so that goes in like that, and so the positive terminal will have to be the one towards the centre of the radio. So when we fit this, it will be in that way round. Okay, so this will be the positive terminal and this will be the negative terminal. Okay, well, once I figured out that some of the pieces of plastic that were protruding weren't supposed to be there, they were just flashing, and I removed those, then it's all fitted together relatively easily. So we've just got a few parts now left to sort out. We need to secure the AM coil in place. So presumably that just fits on like that. We might have to tinker with the setting of the ferrite core on that as we assemble it. Okay, so all we have to do now is try and jiggle this assembly into the enclosure without all the pieces falling back out. So I'm not quite sure how we're going to start with this. Okay, I've got all the parts squeezed into the case, and the antenna just seems to screw to the outer part of the case, and there's a short link here that I'll have to solder onto the board where it says ANT before I finally bring the two parts together. Doesn't seem to be anything holding the speaker down. I'm assuming it just gets trapped between the bottom of the battery compartment and the top of the speaker. So I'll just get these two parts brought together, and then we should be fairly close to having the radio complete. Just the dial to put on there, and then we can try putting some batteries in it. Okay, I should now be able to get these two parts to fit together. Okay, I can now fit this. And we now have one complete radio. I suppose the next thing to do is to see if it actually works. So I'll pop a couple of batteries in. Well, that's a surprise. It really is the first time I've turned this on, so
travel between high risk and low risk areas, that should be avoided to try and prevent the virus from spreading. So overall, it kind of...
the tuning dial's a bit on the tight side, but it does work. Perhaps I can't leave it on any station for too long because I'll get a YouTube copyright strike, but okay, that's AM. We'll try FM. Not the smoothest tuning dial I've ever used, but it does work. And it does seem to have reasonably good reception.
Brilliant stuff. Right, hold your horses. We'll talk more, Terry Walton, okay? Any questions you may have for Terry today, you know what to do. Give us a ring. 0700 100 110. Text it.
So I hope you can hear that on the microphone. So surprisingly, it works. All fitted together reasonably well, and to be honest, not having the instructions made it a bit more fun. I think I would have spent more time deciphering the Chinglish than trying to figure it out anyway. Quite a nice little unit, nice and neat. As I say, all the parts went together neatly, and total time was about 45 minutes from start to finish, and that included messing about with the video. So the question is, was it worth £4.99? And the answer is yes, it was. It was a lot of fun putting this together. It was quite a nice little kit. It's obviously cheap, the parts are cheap, and the instructions were hopeless, but it was a lot of fun, and that's really what I'm looking for with electronic kits. And if I can buy a kit for under £5 delivered and have a bit of fun assembling it, then that's as much as you can ask for, really. So in terms of it being useful for learning, then again, if you are starting out in electronics and you want to learn how to make kits and put things together, again, you can learn a lot from kits like this, if nothing else. How to improve them, how to improve the instructions, how to improve the build experience, if you like. And in all honesty, with a kit like this, the final quality of the product is not that important. You're not really going to use it for much, but the thing you're looking for is a kit that goes together, is not just aggravation, parts missing, it not working. And this was, as I say, it was a lot of fun. So I'd recommend that. I'm not going to give a link to the place I got this from. You can just do a search for AM/FM radio kit on eBay. But that was a kit that's probably worth considering if you're just looking for something cheap and cheerful to pass an hour or so.